Hi everyone. So we've been working with signal phrases and credibility tags, two techniques in MLA citation for the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to give you a verbal presentation of these topics in case that's more helpful to you. So I'm going to talk about the purpose of signal phrases and credibility tags, and then give you some advice about how to use them. So in MLA, which is our citation style in this class, we always want to tell our reader or listener where we found our information. So we're going to start getting into research, and you really need to tell your reader or listener where your information comes from. So to do that, you always need two pieces of information. This is standard, no matter what kind of citation you're using. You'll need the author's last name. That is your preference. If you have an author, you will always use that author's last name. If you have multiple authors, you'll use all of their last names. If you do not have that information, you can use the organization name. So if the page number does exist, you will use it. If the page number doesn't exist, you may be asked to use the paragraph number or chapter number, but only if those are included on the original document. That means that if you're using a website, you will hardly ever use those chapter or paragraph numbers. So the general rule of thumb is you need to know who your author is and if your text has page numbers. So you always need to look for that information. So then, when we first introduce a source, we want to introduce it with a signal phrase and credibility tag. So there are thousands of sources that you could choose to support your information or to prove your point. So these are used to let us know why you've chosen the source you have chosen, right? Why did you pick this source over others? So the first thing you want to do is let us know who the author is with a signal phrase. So a signal phrase has two components. It is the author's last name plus a verb in present tense. For example, Duhigg is my author, and my verb is argues. So common verbs in a signal phrase are things like argues, says, suggests, notes in your sentence. So a signal phrase really is just those two components, the author's last name and the verb, nothing else. Why do we use these? It really differentiates what your author believes versus what you believe. So it's important to let your reader know that this is not your idea. You have taken it from another author. Okay, so here is mine. Duhigg argues that we can change our habits, but because they are deeply ingrained into the brain, it can be a struggle to do so. And then 20, that's my page number. Right, so this is really clear from the beginning of reading this sentence that that is not my idea. So we have Duhigg argues to set off that information. Okay, but then we need a credibility tag the first time we open with a source. So you may already be wondering who is Duhigg, right, from my previous example. You wouldn't know. Right? We don't know anything about who this person is. We don't know why you're using your source from that person. We don't know if that person is an expert on your topic. So that's why we need a credibility tag. So this lets us know that your source or piece of evidence is relevant, that the person who has written this document or the organization that has written the document is legitimate. It really explains why you have chosen your particular source. So we can use a lot of different things to prove credibility. Most common, the title of the book or the article or the podcast. If it's clear why you've chosen the source based on this title, use it. We can also use things like author's background, the organization's purpose or what they do, some kind of description, or a brief summary. So here are a few examples of credibility tags. This one, in her book, The Shape of Things, right? So that one is just an example of giving a title. We can also use, according to Jane Smith in the article, New Trends in Science, right? So we have some idea that Jane Smith is an expert in science. Or we can have Li Chen. Here's the credibility tag, a renowned scientist says. And in that last example, you'll notice that the credibility tag breaks up the signal phrase, right? So here's our author, Li Chen. Here's our verb in present tense, says. And then our credibility tag is right in the middle, a renowned scientist. Okay, so whenever you introduce a source for the first time, you always want to use this signal phrase and credibility tag. It's a pairing that helps you to establish why you've chosen the source. Okay, so let's say you want to go on and you no longer want to use this introductory source. Sorry, let me take that back. So you are using a source for a second time. So you've already introduced the source, you've introduced the credibility. You have another choice. So you can always just take off the credibility tag, leave the signal phrase, or you can use a parenthetical citation. This is the author's or last name or organization plus a page number if you have one within a parenthetical or a set of parentheses. So it's really just the same thing, but it's at the end of your sentence rather than at the start before your before your paraphrase or your quote begins. Okay, so here's my example. It is not okay to plagiarize someone else's work, even though, quote, research is a collective process, one shared and added to by all researchers, end quote. And then here is my parenthetical citation, the author's names, and the page. Okay, so remember, after you introduce a source, you have a choice between this, the parenthetical citation, or the signal phrase. So you can always use these. They're completely interchangeable. Neither is better. You will only use your credibility tag one time. Never repeat that credibility tag. It will just get, we already know who your writer is, right? So it doesn't matter after the first time. Okay, so here are some samples. So I have marked these examples with signal phrases or parenthetical citations in yellow and credibility tag in blue. Okay, so in her important article on the eating habits of rhesus monkeys, right, so that is my credibility tag. It tells me more information about the source that I have found. And then here's my signal phrase. Yen suggests that, quote, monkeys eat often. I conclude my quote here with the page number at the end. Okay, the next one we have Jones argues. So again, breaking up that signal phrase with the credibility tag in the middle here, a renowned automotive engineer. Okay, so now we know why Jones is credible and why she or he can speak on this topic. Okay, and then here is the famous statesman describes. This is a little bit different. This is still a signal phrase, right, because we have the author not directly named, because we have that author directly named later on, Franklin 4 through 17, in a parenthetical. So later on at the end of the sentence, we have the author's name and the page numbers from where this information came. Okay, so I have given you some practice, so you can try and do this yourself, because there's a lot of information to kind of sift through. So here's the quote, and I need friends. This is my author's name. This is the novel that she wrote, and it's on page 79. So if I wanted to introduce this information for the first time, I would write in her novel, so we know what kind of work it is. We have its title, Kindred, so that is my credibility tag. In her novel, Kindred. And then I have my signal phrase, Butler says. That's the author's last name and a verb in present tense. Here's my quote, and I need friends. And then I have a page number, 79. Okay, so the first time I want to do this way. After I introduce my quote, my source this way, then I have a choice between parenthetical citation and in-text citation. Both are great. Here is the second citation of kindred with a parenthetical citation. So, quote, Rufus had caused her trouble, end quote. And then here's my parenthetical, Butler 119, with that information at the end of the sentence. Or I can use my signal phrase in-text citation at the beginning with Butler says, Rufus had caused her trouble, 119 at the end. So the only thing to remember, signal phrase credibility tag first time, you introduce a source, a parenthetical citation, or just a signal phrase. The second time and third time and fourth time and fifth time, you introduce and use a source. Okay, so you're never not going to cite information from a source. It just depends on if you're introducing it for the first time or any of the later times you use a source. Okay, so hopefully this was a helpful overview of signal phrases and credibility tags. These will keep coming back, so it can be helpful to watch this video if this is your preferred way of learning. Okay, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around Canvas. Bye.